All right. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Boris Herzog. I am the program manager for the Guam Apex Accelerator. This slide tells you a little bit about what we do. We provide one-on-one counseling as well as group webinars for anybody that's going after a government contract. So if you're going after a local government contract or a federal government contract, we are here to assist you. We are funded by a grant from the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs. The University of Guam hosts our program, so our offices are located at the University of Guam inside the School of Business and Public Administration. I'm in room 117, and Victoria, our procurement counselor, is room 116. We also have some highlights on this slide here of our program. We have over 700 active clients. In FY25, those clients won over $600 million in government contracts and subcontracts. And we've helped a bunch of clients get HubZone certified, which is the certification we talked about in last week's webinar. If you were interested in that and you weren't able to attend last week, go to our YouTube channel. Just put Guam Apex and you can watch the webinar there. Some of the resource partners that we work with, we are a member of NAPEX, the National Apex Accelerator Alliance. So we're just one Apex Accelerator of 90 plus across the nation. And so we have an alliance we can go to find out what's going on with the latest and greatest in federal contracting and then share that information with our clients. We also work with the Small Business Development Center. So the Guam SBDC is also located here at the University of Guam inside the School of Business and Public Administration. So if you need business development training or assistance, which would be like if you're starting a business, you're expanding your business, you need to put a business plan together so you can take to a bank and get a loan, that kind of thing, go see the folks at the SBDC. We do not assist with that. We strictly focus on government contracting. And then we also work quite a bit with the SBA. This program we're going to talk about today is an SBA Small Business Certification Program. There are other ones like the Hub Zone I mentioned. There's the 8A program, which is going through some difficulty right now. And then the Service Disabled Veteran Owned Small Business Certification. There's also the Small Business Mentor Protege program. So if you are a small business and you're basically a protege and you're looking for a mentor or yeah, you can avail of that program. And basically, if you get approved in that program, the mentor and the protege can form a joint venture, and then that joint venture can go after small business contracts, which are normally not allowed when there's a large business involved. But because you've been blessed by the SBA and you're part of that mentor protege program, it is allowed. So that's something we can assist with as well. Going back to our assistance that we can give, it all starts in the very beginning. You sign up on our website as a client. We will find out all the products and services you're selling. We'll try to figure out which government agencies are buying those products and services. We'll get you registered in SAM, which is the System for Award Management. All federal contractors need to be registered in that database before they can get a federal contract. Once you're registered in there, then we can help you look for opportunities, which are also listed in SAM in the contract opportunities section. You find something you like, we can help you read through the solicitation to make sure you're not missing anything. You want to submit a quote or a proposal, we can help you with that as well. Obviously, we can't tell you how to price it and we can't write your entire proposal for you, but we can give you tips and suggestions on things to include and things not to include. And then win or lose, we help you with the debrief process. So you're entitled to a debrief. A debrief could be something simple as an email saying you weren't the lowest price, or it could be a full-blown PowerPoint presentation showing your strengths and weaknesses of your proposal. You're entitled to that, but you have to ask for it, and there's a way to do that. And so we can show you how to do that as well. So start to finish of the procurement process, that is what we are here for. Here is our contact information. So like I said, starts with signing up as a client on our website. So if you know anybody who's interested in government contracting and they need a little help, please direct them to our website. Here's our contact information. We also have a Facebook and LinkedIn page. So please follow those pages. That's where we share a lot of information related to what's going on, mostly with federal contracting, and all the updates that are going on. Like the big thing right now is, if I'll just take a little sidetrack here, is the 8A program, which is a socially and economically disadvantaged program, which is going through a lot of upheaval right now because there was some fraud found in the program, and so now all the 8A companies are being investigated, and they have to turn in a bunch of documents. And I believe that deadline has passed already, and so a bunch of companies got decertified or suspended from the program for not meeting that deadline. And they're really taking a hard look to see if the program is worth it or not. So at that, which leads me to my point of, this whole month we're doing webinars on all the different certifications, but we're not doing one on 8A just because we're not going to recommend anybody try to apply for that program right now while all this stuff is going on. Let's get it all sorted out first, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll recommend people applying for that program again. All right. We also have our YouTube channel, like I said. So if you miss a webinar, it's all on our YouTube channel. Just put Guam Apex in YouTube and you'll find it. Click videos, and then you can watch all the webinars that are recorded there. And this one will be posted today. If you have any questions as we go along through the presentation, please type them in the chat or wait till the end. There'll be time for questions. And also, if your screen name is something we can't decipher, because whatever you typed into Zoom, I think I saw one that was just a bunch of letters and numbers. Um, Whatever that is, if it's something we can't figure out, please let us know in the chat who you are, just so we can make sure you get a copy of this presentation emailed to you. All right, let's continue on then. So why become a federal contractor? This is the most recent data we have on federal contracts, one in Guam. You can see there's quite a big, good over $2 billion average for the last 5 years. Quite a big jump from FY24 to F25. That's, $800 million more worth of work in 1 year. And we expect it to be probably in the $3 billion range every year going forward for the next at least 3 to 5 years. So there's a ton of work still being done on Guam. Of course, a lot of this is construction, but with every building that's built, you need services to maintain that building, and you need products to put in that building. So all kinds of opportunities for all different types of contractors. Ton of work out there. And today we're going to talk about something known as the Woman-Owned Small Business Certification. So let's just go through a little bit of the eligibility requirements, and then we'll go through the actual application process. So this slide has a couple links on the top. On the left, you'll see there's a link to a little basic summary of the program that you can find on the SBA website. And on the right is a link to the actual law that the rules come from. So, or the eligibility requirements come from. The basic big thing with this program is that the woman owner, the woman owner has got to own at least 51% of the company, but they must have full unconditional control. And that's usually the times we see problems with that, or when companies have problems with that, is usually in a situation where there's multiple owners. The woman owner might be the majority owner. Let's do an example here. There's a company where there's 60% owned by a woman, and then 20% by another man or a man, and then 20% by another man. So there's three owners, two men, one woman, but the woman is the majority owner. But she also has to have full unconditional control. So if the corporate documents say something like, and you see this a lot with LLCs especially, that the three members of the LLC, uh, if the LLC wants to purchase a piece of equipment that's $10,000 or more, then two of the three members have to agree. You see that quite a bit in LLCs. If that's the case, then the woman owner does not have full unconditional control because they can be voted out of a decision. So just know that your business needs to be if you're an LLC, your articles of organization and your operating agreement need to be written in a way where it shows that the woman owner has full unconditional control. They cannot be voted out of a decision. Whatever their decision is, that's final. So the ED, Woman-Owned Small Business Program, ED stands for Economically Disadvantaged, and it follows like the 8A rules. So they take the 8A economic rules, and we'll get to that, specifically what they are towards the end of this presentation. Applying for, woman-owned or ED woman-owned doesn't really make a big difference. We'll talk more about that when we get to there'll be a PDF file that I'll share with you, and we'll talk about the differences between the programs. But just know right now, the only difference really is financial information. If you apply for the woman-owned program, you really don't have to give them any financial information. If you apply for the economically disadvantaged woman-owned program, then you got to give them some financial information. There are some third-party certifier organizations out there, so they still exist and they have certified woman-owned small business and ED woman-owned small business in the past. And so that could come into play. We'll talk about that also as we go through the application process. There's an annual renewal, and that was waived for the last 3 years, but I think it's enforced now. I think it's back because we've had people asking us for help with renewals, especially for the Hub Zone program, and also I saw a renewal for the Service Disabled program. So the woman-owned renewal might be back now, but so it used to be an annual renewal, but now it's every 3 years. So and same thing with recertification. It's every 3 years. Recertification and renewal is going to be the same thing. And then there's a 5% federal contracting goal. So how does that come into play? The federal government has a goal to award 23% of its contracts to small businesses. And then they chop that goal a little further. They chop it down a little further where they want to give 5% of those contracts to women-owned small businesses, 5% to the service disabled veterans, 5% to the 8A, and 3% to Hub Zone certification companies, Hub Zone certified companies. So these are just goals. They're not laws. They're just, things, milestones that different federal agencies are trying to hit. So woman owned, actually, a lot of the federal agencies make that goal because the hardest goals to hit are usually Hub Zone and Service Disabled Veteran. But a lot of them hit that woman owned goal. And just because there's a lot of 8A companies that are also woman owned. And so that those companies hit both goals basically. So. But there's a federal contracting goal. And so the government does that in the form of the contracts known as set-asides. So if you're ever in SAM and you're looking at a federal opportunity or a contract opportunity and you see that it says, oh, what's this set-aside? And it says set-aside small business. What that means is that the opportunity there is only available if the prime contractor that's going to submit a proposal or a quote is a small business. And then they can also do set asides that take it a step further. They can say, oh, this is set aside for woman owned only, or this is set aside for Hub Zone only. So in those cases, then the prime bidder must have that certification. So that's how they try to give work to these different categories or give contracts to these different categories. They call them set asides. So if you ever hear that term, that's what they're talking about. All right. So certification is all done on a new website known as certifications.sba.gov. It's not that new anymore. It's over a year old now. Also known as the Unified Certification Platform or the UCP. But before all these different small business certifications had their own websites, and you'd have to, if you want to apply for multiple certifications, you'd have to go to different websites, upload the same documents, but on different websites. So SBA said, well, this is kind of ridiculous. Why don't we just make one website since these documents are all shared amongst these certifications? And so if you need to upload proof of U.S. citizenship, then you upload it once and we can use it for your Hub Zone application, and we can use it for your 8A application, and we can use it for your woman owned, and we can use it for your service disabled veteran. So um, it's a good idea. Should have been done a long time ago. But this is the site where you go to now to do everything for these certifications. So we're going to assume you don't have an account there, and we're going to just kind of show you the process here. So, let me go back a little bit. So what you're going to do on the bottom of the page, or it might be on the top right, actually, you're going to click sign up or login. And then a little box will open up here, and you're going to click it again, sign up, login. And then you're going to click sign up again after you put in your email address and click I agree to the terms. I'm sorry, you're not going to put in your email address and I agree because this is the first time you're doing it. So you're going to have to go to the don't have an account and you're going to click sign up. Sorry, I got people logging in here. Let me just let them in. Okay, here we go. All right. And then on this field, you're going to enter typical info, first name, last name, email address, country of residence. Country will be United States. And then you're going to click I agree. And then you need to set up two things. You need to verify that your email address is yours, and then you got to set up a password. So we're going to start with this email address part first. So you're going to click Setup under Email, and it's going to send you an email that wants you to click a link inside the email. Or you can just enter the code that's in the email right onto the application screen. So on the bottom right is what that email looks like. So there'll be a little verification code there that you could just enter right on the screen, or you can click that verify your email box. Either way you want to do it, doesn't really matter. The code's probably the easiest. Just type it into the SBA certification site. Then that proves that that is your email. And now you're going to set up your password. So you're going to click setup under password, and then you're going to create a password. So typical stuff here. Just follow the rules. um, 16 characters minimum. So, and then keep track of your passwords. And then you can set up an optional authenticator app. Some people have authenticator apps on their phones and their computers. They use that instead of having like a cell phone number or something like that. That's optional. It could just be a secondary method because maybe you forget your password or something, you get locked out. You can use your authenticator app. So, but again, it's optional, so you don't have to. So if you don't want to set it up, you just click continue. And now you'll see this screen, and it's a little confusing to most people at first because what are they talking about, this invitation code? So that will come later. I'll talk about that later. But the first time you're setting up your account, you're not going to have this invitation code when you're applying for the any of these SBA certifications. So you're just going to click begin. And then you need to claim your business. So again, we're doing this for people who've never logged into the site yet. So what this is doing is making sure that you are connected to the business that's going to be applying for the woman-owned certification. So, and they give you a big note there. This process must be completed by the primary qualifying owner of the business. So this needs to be the majority owner's email address, their information that's created this account, logged in, and that's going to basically grab this information from Sam and pull it over into the SBA certification platform. So, which leads me to Sam. So before you can do this, you need to have a SAM registration, and your SAM registration needs to be active. SAM is the System for Reward Management. Like I mentioned earlier, anybody who wants to be a federal contractor needs to have a SAM registration. You need to be registered in that database. So it's going to pull your UEI, your cage code, and your TIN from SAM. Your TIN is your EIN. If you're a sole proprietor, you're going to put in you're not using an EIN, you're using your social security number, then you'll put your social security number in there. Okay. So it's going to look to make sure that matches up with Sam. It's going to pull it over. You're going to click fine. It's going to say, hey, here you go. Is this you? And it should be you. And then you're just going to tell the SBA, okay, what type of business you are. So it'll have a list there. Sole proprietor, corporation, LLC, partnership, things like that. So just pick which one ever applies to you, and then click next. In this case, it was a sole proprietor. So now you've claimed your business. So what it means is SBA now knows that this email address that logged in is connected to that business. And that's the business that's going to be applying. Now, if you've accidentally, this happens quite a bit. If you had one of your staff do it and they logged in with their email address and they're not the owner of the company, obviously, and they did the claiming, you're going to run into an issue because when it first starts putting information about the owner, it's going to think that the person who logged in is the owner, and it's going to automatically assume that, and then it'll mess up your application. So if that has happened, there is no way to undo the claiming of the business. You have to basically send an email to certifications@sba.gov or call them. There's a number, I think it's an 866 number or a 1-800 number. I think it's on the top of the main screen. You'd have to call them and just have them. They have to manually unclaim it. So just know that. All right, but if you did everything right, it's claimed. You'll be at this screen here, and then you are going to click Start a New Application because that's what we're going to do. We're going to apply. So let's do that. And here you have the chance to assign a delegate. So now is where the owner can basically hand it off and have someone else do the application. So that's up to you if you want to do it that way, or, um, the owner can keep continuing on. So, yes or no here. Most people, I think they do no. It's up to you though. So this screen shows you the top. There's a bar. For first part, there's assign a delegate, then ownership, control and operations, and then it's grayed out after that. And basically, as you go through the application, all those sections will light up in blue and then dark blue when they're complete. So the first question is, what type of owner are you? So you're going to select it from the drop down. There's going to be two choices there. There's going to be individual and organization. And what they mean is if your company is owned by people, then you're going to select individual. If your company is owned by another company, which happens, that's possible, then you're going to select organization. And that's usually for like Native Hawaiian organizations, Alaskan Natives, Indian tribes, things like that. Because those are big conglomerate companies that have lots of, parent and sister and sub companies underneath them. So, okay. So most of us are going to be selecting individual. So select the type of owner, click next, and then start putting the information. So like I said, this needs to be the owner who's setting up this first part here. So put in your legal first name, legal last name. Only fields with an asterisk are required. So if there's no asterisk, you don't have to fill out that field. And then put in your title, your email, your phone number, what percentage ownership of the business you have. And you notice on the towards the bottom, there's a little save button. So you're going to do this for all the owners. So the majority owner, let's use our example like I used earlier, 60%. So I'd put in the person there, put in their name, and they'd click 60%, and then they'd U.S. citizen, yes or no. By the way, if the owner needs to be a U.S. citizen, that's one of the requirements for these programs, for all of them actually, not just the woman owned, but any small business certification. The owner's got to be, 51% of the ownership needs to be at least U.S. citizen. So, or I'm sorry, U.S. citizens need to own at least 51% of the company. The gender, you're going to select female because this is the woman-owned program. And then veteran, yes or no. And then also, there's also service disabled veteran that could be selected there. Remember, this site is used to apply for 4 different certifications. So these gender, veteran, and 8A social disadvantage, those 3 things that are circled there in purple, are what those are the questions that are going to decide which certifications you can apply for. You don't have to apply for them, but which ones you'll be allowed to apply for. So, like if you selected male instead of female on the gender, the woman-owned application will not be there. You won't have that option to apply for it. Right? Also with the veteran, if you don't select anything for the veteran, you won't be able to apply for service disabled veteran. So, and then there's 8A social disadvantage. Like I said, I don't recommend anyone to apply for that now, but you can still select the choices there. So that fall under social disadvantage. And you'll have the card, as we go down the road here, the card will show up where you can apply for it, but you don't have to apply for it. So, but going back to the ownership percentage, so just keep putting everything in until the ownership percentage reaches 100%. So the 60% owner in our example here goes first, and then the 20% male would enter their information, and then 20% other male would enter their information. It'd be 100%, and then 3 people's names would be listed there. Because this was a sole proprietor, they own 100%, and that's why there's only one person's name listed there. I saw something pop into the chat, so let me check that real quick. Oh, what does social disadvantage actually mean? What are the criteria? That's a great question. So on the application, they give you categories like basically minorities. So African Americans, Pacific Islanders, things like that, and then you choose from that. Now, this is going to kind of tangent off to the 8A program. Um, So even if you select that social disadvantage, that's just kind of a little marker of where they want to classify you. If you were to apply for that program, you would still have to submit proof that you're socially disadvantaged. So not just I belong to a category, but you also have to submit basically a write-up couple page write-up, give two examples of what happened in your life that are considered social disadvantage. You were turned down for a job for something because of your skin color, something like that. You'd have to have some concrete examples. That's what they're asking people to do when they apply for this program. Okay, so once you've entered all the owners, you're going to click next. And now it's going to say, okay, now list all the partners, board members, officers, managers in your company who are not owners. So these are people who, you have an operations manager maybe, or somebody in there, or maybe you have a board of directors, but they don't have any shares in the company, but they obviously make some kind of decisions for your company. So they need to be listed here. That's what this next screen is for. The people who are decision makers, but are not owners. So again, just list all the people involved. If you're a sole proprietor, obviously you don't have to do anything here. You're just going to click next. But then click save after each person. Sometimes I'll use an example of like a construction company. You might have a person on your team who's known as a responsible management employee or an RME. That's quite popular in construction companies. I think it's necessary, it's required. And so that person would, on this part here, fill out the part that says, "Are you a license holder?" And they would say yes. And then it's going to say, "Well, what kind of license is it?" And you're going to say, "I'm an RME," whatever it is. So some industries require licenses, like if you're a nurse or some nursing industry, accounting, right? Maybe you have a CPA license, whatever it is. Some industries don't. So it all depends. So I can't tell you exactly what to put there. But if you have some license and you're not an owner, but you have a license that's required in that industry, then you would enter that on that "Are you a license holder?" question. So, all right, when everything is entered and all the people who are involved are entered, you're going to click next. And then it's going to give you a list of things you're going to apply for. So in this case, it said woman owned and ED woman owned because when I made this, took these screenshots, I only put female for gender, then it automatically included hub zone because Guam is in a hub zone. So it already knew from my address that the Guam address is a hub zone. So it said, oh, you can apply for that too. And also remember, that is the point of this website where you can apply for multiple things at one time. So if you want to apply for women owned only, that's up to you. But I would highly suggest if you're going to apply for women owned, you might as well apply for hub zone at the same time, especially if you're on Guam, because the entire island's a hub zone and the CNMI as well. So if you're in Saipan, Rota, or Tinian, do the hub zone as well, just because um, all the islands are hub zone automatically, but you still have to apply to get the certification. So, okay. So now here you can choose which one of these you want to apply for. Of course, this is the woman-owned small business webinar today. So we're going to select woman-owned or ED woman-owned. You notice if you select ED, you automatically are both economic disadvantage and women-owned. If you only select the woman-owned, then you won't be ED. So you got to pick one or the other, basically. All right, click next. These are all the possible certifications. So if you checked, I'm female, I'm a veteran, service-able veteran, these are the six different things you could apply for, basically. Just wanted to show you that. All right. But we're doing woman-owned, so after you click next on that previous screen, you're going to see this. These are known as cards. So each one of these blocks is known as a card, and they're just basic different sections of the application. So you just need to fill each card out, and it'll automatically lead you through each card as you go through the application process. So just click next, and it'll open up the first card and start, which is the third-party certification, and start with that. So it's going to say, is the applicant certified as a woman-owned or ED woman-owned by an SBA-approved third party? So like I said, mentioned earlier, there are four companies or four organizations that are allowed to certify companies as woman-owned. Now, these are all organizations that you need to be a member of, right? And I believe they have membership fees. And then they also might have fees for doing this certification. And so if you've done this or you did it in the past, maybe a couple years ago, you would have a certification from them, and then you would say yes here. And then when you get to the upload screen where you got to upload documents, you would upload a copy of that certification. Now, just know if you got certified through these third parties, you're probably going to get your certification done real quick. They just probably need to make sure everything is still valid. That's all. But most people have not gone this route. They have not gone through these third parties. And by the way, this is the only SBA program that has these third parties that offer certification. The 8A Hub Zone and Serve Disabled Veteran do not have this option. So, okay. So most of us are going to select no. Click next. Now they're saying, have you ever been declined, basically? So have you ever received a decision from the SBA or a third party that was a denial of your application or a decertification or a protest in the last 90 days? So if you were denied 2 years ago, you can say no to that question because they're only talking about the last 90 days. So basically, so if you were denied in the last 90 days, they would want to know about it, and you're just gonna have to answer some questions there. All right, click next. So now we're talking about some business information. So do you have a franchise agreement? Yes or no? Um, Most companies don't, but there are franchises out there that might think of wanting to apply for this. So it all depends. It's hard if you're so, for example, let's just look at like a car rental company. A lot of car rental companies are independently operated and owned, but they have a franchise agreement with Hertz or Dollar Rent a Car or Avis, whoever. So while it's not entirely a deal breaker, it's usually pretty hard because the SBA wants to make sure you have full unconditional control. And if you're a Hertz, you have a franchise agreement with Hertz, let's say, uh, it's very hard to have full control because Hertz is going to dictate some things that you have to do. Now, does it mean 100% that you can't get it? No, it just means you have to. There will be a lot of back and forth with the SBA in how your franchise. You're gonna have to turn in your franchise agreement. They're gonna look through it, and then they're gonna say they're gonna make you answer questions, to make sure that you have the full control of the company. So that is an issue when it comes to franchises. Just note that, but franchise is not the majority or normal thing. I got some more things coming in my. All right, what type of documentation do you need for the ED woman owned? Is there an income limit? We're going to talk about that towards the end of the presentation. So, all right. Then they have this question, the second one, does your company share any of the following with another business or organization? So question two, basically the choices are going to be location, employees, equipment, services, or not applicable. So the reason why they're asking this question is they're looking at something known as affiliation. If you are tangled up with another company, like you share locations, you share employees, you share management, you share equipment, you share all kinds of things with another company, they might go, you know what, you guys aren't really two separate companies. You're more like one company. So we're going to consider you affiliated. And then we're going to have to look and see if you're really a small business or not. Because remember, these programs are only for small businesses. And so then what they'll do is they'll add up the revenue usually of the other company and the revenue of your company. And if both your revenues combined still fall under the small business threshold, then it's fine. Affiliation doesn't matter. You can be affiliated. But if it's too high, because maybe the other company is doing quite well and your income is outside the boundaries of small business, then they might say, you know what, you guys are affiliated, so you can't apply for this. Now, what is the limit? It all depends. It all depends on your primary NAICS code. So I'm going a little off the track here, but when you registered in SAM and set up your company in SAM, you had to tell the government what your primary NAICS code was. What is the main source of income for your company? And a NAICS code is basically just a six-digit code that kind of tells the government how to categorize whatever business you're in and the products and services you're selling. So whatever you picked as your primary, that code has a limit on it, and you can look it up. The SBA has on their website. I believe there's a NAICS code table or a small business size standard table, as they call it, and then you can find out what the limit is. For example, construction. If your construction NAICS code 236220, the limit is 45 million. So what that means is if your revenue is more than 45 million, Usually it's an average over the last 5 years, then you are no longer a small business. So that's how it kind of works. But there's different limits for different industries and different products and services. So I couldn't tell you exactly what it is for your specific case. But just know that's why they're asking that question. Okay. Does the company have any agreements or receive financial support? Again, ownership and control. They want to make sure you're not beholden to anyone. Some companies can go do this. Maybe they can't get the bank financing, so they'll get a private loan. There are tons of private lenders out there. And so if that's the case, that could be an issue. Maybe you're not paying that private lender, so they call in that loan and that bankrupts your company or something like that. That's a problem. So I just want to make sure that's something like that's not going on. And then, are you doing a business under assumed trade or fictitious name? That's if you have a DBA, that's what that is. So if you have a DBA, that you say yes to that, and then you just tell them what your DBA is. So a DBA is doing business as. So okay, let's move on to the next slide. If my computer will cooperate. There we go. Are professional licenses or certificates required to operate the applicant business? It all depends. Different industries require licenses, some industries don't. So if it is yes, you're going to enter the legal name of the person who holds a license, what kind of license it is, and an explanation. That's all you're going to do. Otherwise, select no, click next. And now you're going to talk a little about the majority owner, the applicant. So the race, ethnicity, date of birth, country of birth, SS, so basic stuff here. So click next after you enter all that information. And then they want to see if there's any federal relationships going on here. So, you're currently debarred or suspended from any, obviously you don't want that. Are you past due on any federal taxes? So you shouldn't be past due. Have you ever received an SBA loan? So that's a possibility. A lot of people on Guam have received SBA loans, especially after typhoons and stuff where they have the low interest loans. I mean, I had one a long time ago. And so you would say yes, and then it'll just ask you, well, what's the status of your loan? Is it paid off? Are you current? That kind of thing. So, if no, just put no. And then, is any member of your household an SBA employee? Again, they just want to make sure there's no conflicts of interest going on here. Is any member of your household a federal employee? Again, another conflict of interest question. So if you say yes, you just have to give them more information. Okay, then they want, so they call this other ownership experience, but basically this is for the business that's applying. They want to know, well, what makes you qualified to run this business, basically. So describe your managerial experience and qualifications to run or control this business, include any educational background or experience that contributed to your ability to run the control of the business. So I can tell you if you have an MBA, you can just write one sentence in there. I have an MBA. That's all you need to write. If you don't have an MBA, you're gonna have to write a couple sentences at least about what makes you qualified and the type of experience and education have to run this type of business that you're running. So just put that in there. Do you have ownership in another business? Um, if you say yes to that, so let's say you do have 10% ownership of some other business or 20% or some whatever it is. So you're gonna have to enter your title, your business name, the other business name, your ownership percentage in that other business, if that other business has employees, and an explanation of how you can devote full time to the applicant business while working at the other business. And the reason for that is, remember, the rule here is the woman owner must have full unconditional control. They need to be managing this place. They need to be making the day-to-day decisions. They need to have all the short-term and long-term decisions. So if you're running another business, how are you devoting time 100% to this business that's applying? Now, it's not automatically a deal breaker. You just need to explain it. So there's explanations like you might be running this business at hours that are different from the other business you're working at or running, or have an ownership percentage in. Or maybe you have an ownership percentage in that other business, and all you do is provide support via monthly or weekly meetings or something like that. Whatever it is, just need to explain it to them. All right. Are you engaged in outside obligations such as holding another job? So again, if you have another job, and you say yes to that, they're going to want to, okay, well, how are you doing that and then running this business at the same time? So explain it. And then are you or your ownership interest subject to any conditions or agreements that could impact control? Again, the woman owner needs to be in full control. So if that's yes, you're going to have to explain it. So and then you build your resume now. So basically, you are going to start with your current job, which is the business that's applying for the certification here. And that's why there's no end date. There's no asterisk on the end date. And then you put in your title of your current business here, and then a brief description of your responsibilities currently held. You're going to say yes. You're going to click save, and then it'll put a little blurb below there of what you just wrote, and then you can put in the business, the job you had before this business. And so put at least two jobs in there, so put the current business and then at least one other job in there. So at least there's something. Click save after you enter each job. And then that last question that says, do you manage or supervise the day-to-day operations? You're gonna, whether you put yes or no, if you put yes, you're gonna have to explain, okay, how do you do that? And if you put no, you're gonna have to explain, okay, who's doing that and why are they doing that? So click next. Now, some more on the affiliation. This is actually all affiliations right here, pretty much. So, do you any of your immediate family members own a business that you conduct business with? Does the applicant business have a financial relationship with an outside business that is owned or operated by former colleagues of this owner? Does the applicant business have any employee, officer, or manager that formerly was your employer? So, this is all about affiliation, who you're related to, who you're doing business with. Um, are you a former employer of any of the qualifying owners? Right? Are you the former majority owner of the applicant business? So if you say yes to any of these, you're just going to have to explain a little more about what's going on. Then the last question, are you the highest compensated? That should be yes. In rare occasions, is it no? But the woman owner, considering they have full and unconditional control of the company and are managing the day-to-day operations and making all the decisions, they normally should be the highest paid. However, there are industries, maybe the tech industry you're in, and maybe you have some kind of engineer or some kind of IT person on your staff that has some kind of license that's required in your industry. So and the standard for them is a higher pay. That's a possibility. So you just need to explain it if you are not the highest compensated person in your company. All right. Now you get to the document upload section. So this is where you're going to upload proof of everything you said. So if we're just looking at WOSB right now, we'll talk about the ED in a moment. But if you're just doing the WOSB, the woman-owned small business, you're gonna have to upload if it's a corporation, your articles of incorporation. If you are an LLC, it's going to be your articles of organization and your operating agreement. And if it's and then they want meeting minutes. I don't understand the meeting minutes thing, but they want it for everybody. Even if you're sole prop, they want meeting minutes, which makes no sense because a sole proprietor doesn't have any meeting minutes. But you need to upload something to get past that field. So I would suggest if there are no meeting minutes, if that's not something you do, that's not required in your type of organization, like a sole proprietor, just upload a PDF that says, I am a sole proprietor. We do not have meeting minutes. But that way you uploaded something and you get past that field. So, if you have a DBA, you're going to upload your fictitious name certificate. For most people on Guam, at least, it's just their business license. That's pretty much that shows your DBA on it right there. So proof of U.S. citizenship. So that would be a copy of your passport, birth certificate, or naturalization papers, whatever it is. And then a 1040 Schedule C or something that shows that your business, filed some taxes basically, or is in business. So make sure to select. And as you upload each one, it's going to ask you, okay, what's the document you're uploading? And you pick the document type from the drop-down menu. I don't have a screenshot of it, but that's what it's going to do. And like I said, if you're asked to upload a document that doesn't apply, then upload a PDF that says why it doesn't apply. So like that sole proprietor example I gave you with the meeting minutes. So like the 1040 Schedule C, you might say, I just started my business. I don't have any filed 1040 Schedule C yet. So you might just tell them that. But you got to upload something to get past that screen. All right, click next. Now, let's take a look at some documentation. Well, we talked a little bit about what kind of documentation is required, but let's go through the actual list from the SBA. So I'm going to jump over to a PDF real quick. Hopefully this loads up on your screens. Everyone should see this PDF on their screens. So, just some, these are for woman-owned and ED woman's-owned documents that are usually required. So if your name differs from your submitted citizen document, so, which happens quite a bit, especially when you get married, then you got to have to provide a proof of name change. Um, but if it's a passport you're using, it should have your up-to-date name, right? So, I'm just going to go through the highlighted things here. I think that apply the most. So, outside employment. So provide a statement explaining any outside employment the owner currently has with another business. You saw that you had to do that in the application. So provide the resume. We saw that already, but they give you tips here on what to include in your resume. So include the following information: your education or technical training, any additional business owned, the description of your current duties, any other current or past employment experience, such as employer's name, dates of employment, job title, and description of duties. So pretty basic there, nothing too out of the ordinary. So here's the ED requirements. So tax returns, obviously, because they want to, not only do you need to be woman-owned, but you also need to be economically disadvantaged. We're going to get to a screen that shows you what the actual numbers are shortly, but basically, we need to prove that by giving them financial information. And so they want to get as much financial information as they can, tax returns, W-2s, all the schedules, financial statements, that would be your P&Ls, your balance sheets, statement of owner's equity, that kind of thing. If you have a retirement accounts, they want to know all that stuff. And any personal financial information. If you're gonna have to give your spouse's information as well, because in community property states at least, even though something might be in your spouse's name, you still are entitled to 50% of it. So that might be considered you don't have an economic disadvantage if if all the assets and are in one spouse's name. So that's a possibility. Okay. So that's the financial information for ED, but we'll get a little more into detail as we go through the next couple slides here. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so now we get to that. Remember in the very beginning when it says, do you have an invitation code? And we said, no, we're not even going to do that yet. Now this is where that comes into play. So in the very beginning, you had to list out all the owners, but remember, you're the majority owner. You're the woman owner who's doing this application. So if there are other owners involved, you'd have to list them out. If there were people who didn't have shares, but were managers, directors, things like that, you'd have to list them out as well. So all those people you listed out will appear on this screen. And remember, this was done as a sole prop, so there are no other people to invite. But all those other people, if you have other people involved in your company, will be listed on this screen, and you're going to have to invite them to complete their portion of the application, which will be very similar to this application right now. So if you have a complex company with a lot of managers and people involved, this could be quite a bit of people involved. If your company's small, only two or three owners, or maybe just one or two owners, a lot easier. So it gets more complex when there's more people involved, which is pretty much everything. That's how it works. So basically, their names will be listed there. You're going to click an invite button on each of their names. You're going to put in their email address, and they're going to get an email that's going to invite them to contribute to this application. And when they get that, they're going to have that code. And when they go in and set up their account, it's going to say, do you have an invite code? And they will, and they'll say yes, and they'll put in the invite code. That's what that's for. So, all right. If there's no names listed, then obviously there's no one to invite. So you're just going to click next. All right. Got the privacy statement here that happens on a lot of government websites. So just click next. Now, if your application was incomplete and you got to this point, this is what will happen. You'll get a screen that looks like this. It'll say, hey, all the questionnaires must be completed before you can sign the application. And then you can click that little here link in blue, and it'll take you right back to where you need to go. And so this had two problems. All the questionnaire weren't completed and all the required documents were not uploaded. So it gave you two places to go, one to back to the questionnaire and one back to the upload documents. So I just wanted to show you an example here. So if I click the blue here, it took me back to the card in the very beginning and it shows you they're all complete except that one that wasn't complete. So, all right. But hopefully you don't see this screen because your application is complete. And so, you'll get to this, the attestation, and you'll have to just click the little signature box there that I hereby certify. Basically, that everything you said is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. And then click submit. And you'll be taken back to your dashboard, and it'll say you have an application in, and you can click view to view your application. You can click those three little dots and withdraw your application, although I don't know why you would do that instantly. I did it actually just so that I could, I all was doing this was to get the screenshots. So I didn't want an actual application to go through and waste anybody's time. So I withdrew it right away. But okay. So you can withdraw or view right here. Um, as soon as you do something in this system, you will get an email. And so like here, you can say that your application was submitted. So it shows you there that it was submitted. There's a screening process underway. Analysis will begin review of the contents to ensure it is complete. All right. So when you get an email, it'll say usually, hey, check your messages. So on the home page of your account here, there's three things. There's home, messages, and documents. So if you just click messages, all the emails they send you will be in that messages. It's like a little mailbox inside the program. So, and that's what they'll do is, so just if you're thinking, well, if it's not complete, will they reject me? No, they will not reject you right away. They will reach out to you and say, hey, we sent you a message. Go check your messages. You'll log in, you'll check your messages, and then it'll tell you, okay, this is what we want. Usually it's something like, hey, you turn this in, but it's not exactly what we want. We want this other file, or we want this other document. Or sometimes I've seen it, especially with I saw with the service disabled veteran, they actually help you quite a bit. And they were like, your articles of organization said this, but we need it to say this. And they actually give you language like you should include this in your articles. So things like that. So they try to help you. They don't just deny you right off the bat if you got something wrong. They will go back and forth. So, all right. So what about the ED? Here's the actual dollar amounts. So, to be considered economically disadvantaged, your personal assets have to be under 6.5 million. Your personal net worth has to be under 850,000, and your adjusted gross income it needs to be less than 400,000 average over the last 3 years. The ED application is exactly the same like I showed you with the cards, except they have one more card, the card that says economic disadvantage. So you would click, as it takes you through, you'll make you fill out this card, and this is what that card asks you. So have you taken any draws or distributions from the business in the last 3 years? So you write up a little story about that if you have. Have you transferred any assets to any immediate family members for less than fair market value in the last 2 years? Why would they ask that question? That's because they want to make sure you're not trying to just get rid of stuff so you can qualify for the program. So if you've moved assets for less than fair market value to somewhere to a family member, they're wondering why are you doing that? Yeah. So if you say yes, you're gonna have to answer more questions. Scroll down. Then they want all your financial information again, cash in hand, savings account balance, checking account balance, salary, any other sources of income. Scroll down some more. Equity in the applicant business. Obviously, it's going to be whatever it is. If whatever your ownership percentage is. Equity in any other businesses. Do you have any notes receivable? Right. So do you basically have money coming in that you've loaned out to somebody? Do you have any a Roth IRA? Any retirement accounts? Why do they care about or life insurance policy that has cash surrender value? Why do they ask those questions? Again, economically disadvantaged. You have to have an economic disadvantage. If you have Roth IRA accounts or these life insurance policies that have the CSV, basically whole life, where you can borrow against it at a pretty good low interest rate. If that's going on for you, then you're not economically disadvantaged because you can just borrow that money from there. So that's what they're trying to figure out here. Stock, bonds, mutual funds, do you own a primary residence? So remember, anything you answer here with a yes, you're going to have to explain. Registered in real estate vehicles. Again, this is all to make sure you fall in those guidelines of the asset limits, the adjusted gross income limit, the net worth limit. So a lot of information to fill out. It's like doing a mortgage, basically. And do you have any unpaid assessed taxes? Put in your AGI, and then upload everything that we had before, plus 3 years of business and personal income tax returns, 3 years of W-2s for you and your spouse. So basically, you need to be in business for a while if you want to apply for the ED. You can't be brand new and apply for ED. Okay, I saw something pop in the chat, so let me check that real quick. Do they take sole prop credit scores that are acceptable? I don't think well, they might look at it or something, but I've never seen them ask any questions about a credit score. So, yeah, that's a good question. I've never seen them ask that. Yeah. Remember, the financial information is only if you're applying for the ED woman owned. You're not going to get any financial questions if you just apply for woman owned. So, which leads to the question always, well, then what's the difference? Why would anyone apply for ED? Which is it's gonna take me a moment here to explain this. So when this woman-owned certification was first set up, the government looked at industries and said, okay, women are underrepresented in these certain industries, construction, maybe some security services, something like that, janitorial services, maybe, I don't know. So they said, oh, so we want those NAICS codes that represent those industries to be associated with woman-owned certification. Then they said, what about industries where women aren't just underrepresented, but they're severely underrepresented? Well, then we're going to have those NAICS codes associated with EDWOSB. And so when we set aside things in the NAICS codes associated for WOSB, you need to have the WOSB certification to be the primary bidder, basically. And when we set aside NAICS codes on a contract for EDWOSB, then you need to have that certification to apply for that. So ED is also WOSB, and they can they can bid on anything because you have basically both. The woman-owned, though, can only bid on NAICS codes that are set aside for woman-owned. They could not bid on a NAICS code that's set aside for ED. So that's the difference, basically. So then the question becomes, well, how often are things set aside for ED versus women-owned? And I can tell you from my experience in Guam and the CNMI, not very often. Most of the time, if there is a woman-owned set aside in this area, it's for women-owned. So it's up to you if you want to go through the extra pain of uploading all these financial documents and getting that all ready. Especially if you're out here and you're concentrating your government contracting in this area. Not a lot of work is set aside for EDWSB. So WOSB will cover pretty much everything that you're going to need out here. That's my opinion on that based on the experience we've seen out here. But it's up to you how you want to do this. All right, let's move forward. All right. Sometimes my computer doesn't want to work. All right, so where to get help? Here's some help for you. There's a phone number. Like I said, that phone number is especially for the people. Well, if you have any problems with the website, technical issues too, you can call that number or you can email them. I found that if you call them, you might be on hold for a little bit, a long bit, but you'll probably get better assistance. Whereas if you email and it's something that they're not used to seeing, or maybe you don't have the right terminology when you're trying to explain it to them, it's going to take a back and forth with a bunch of emails. Whereas if you call them, you can kind of discuss it on the phone and figure out the right verbiage, and they can figure out exactly what you're asking. So calling to me is better. Something just popped in the chat. Let me check that. When it comes to grants, I am not sure. So the question is, are ED more often awarded grants and WSB are less awarded? I don't know. So we strictly focus on government contracting. We don't deal with grants. So yeah, I don't have an answer to that question. You could probably go to usaspending.gov and do some kind of search for grants and then filter it through ED and versus WOSB. You could probably do that on that website. Oh, are more ED more often awarded contracts? Okay. Uh, based on from what I've seen, the general category woman-owned small business is awarded more contracts in this area. Now, I can't say overall in the United States, but I've seen in this area it's mostly WOSB, not EDWOSB. So, okay. There's also a knowledge base here you can go to. It has a bunch of supporting document guides. Is a service desk you can click on here and find out all kinds of information. Um, Let me just check the chat one more time. Okay. But I think the big question is going to be the next slide here, or the thing that everybody wants to see. Um, so these are the current Guam women-owned small business and ED women-owned small business that are certified in Guam. So we have 33 right now. Since this program has started back, the first one was back in 2021, I believe. Oh no, 2020. Yeah, 2020. Number nine there, Cornerstone. They were the first ones, Cornerstone Valuation. Yeah. So in the last, 5 years, I'm just starting our 6 year now, or actually no, 6 years because 20, well, it was at the end of 2020. So 5 years, we've had 33. So hopefully we can get this number to increase because there are hundreds of women-owned small businesses in Guam and the CNMI. And I don't think we have one yet in the CNMI that's gone through it. These are all Guam. So hopefully we can get these numbers up to at least 50. So the next year or so. But you can see it's not just construction. In fact, it's very few construction. It's all kinds of different things. So we got facility support services, advertising agencies, remediation, real estate, electrical. There's a car rental right there. There's a paint store, food service, janitorial, furniture store, environmental consulting. What else? Payroll services, groceries, so all kinds of things. A wholesaler, landscaping, furniture. Yeah, all kinds of good stuff there. So plenty of opportunities in all kinds of different industries and categories. All right. So I believe we got some. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to open up the questions now. So I'm going to stop the share. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask any questions. I did notice there, let's see, do we know? So there are some names here that I'm not sure who they are. So if you, like I said earlier in the very beginning, if your name is something we can't decipher, I see 003 here. So whoever that is, please let us know in the chat who you are so we can make sure to get a copy of this to you. All right, any questions? Feel free to unmute and ask. No, I knocked everyone out again. All right, cool. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Please join us next week at 10 o'clock when I believe we're going to discuss service-able veteran. Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Cool. All right. So service-able veteran, we're going to talk about another certification, the SDV OSB, or also veteran-owned certification as well. Again, with the same website. So if you know anybody who's a veteran and they're a business owner, or a service-able veteran and they're a business owner, please recommend them. And they're interested in government contracting, please have them attend that webinar. Again, sign up as a client on our website. And yeah, we will assist you with that. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we see you next week.